Hey, Itamar, great to have you on the show. Itamar is a growth consultant who runs ads for B2B and B2D startups, worked with 20 plus startups ranging from seed stage to Series D, and managed millions in ad spend. We are going to talk about how to run paid social that actually convert. How about if you introduce yourself?
Sure. So first of all, Daniel, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to talk about paid ads. And I'm, like you said, I'm a growth consultant. I work with B2B and B2D startups. And a few things that you should know about me is one, that I'm very performance focused. My entire career in marketing has been in user acquisition roles. And so I've been trained to look at the end goal. What's the ROI of the activity? How many meetings do we book, etc. And the other thing is that I'm very excited about creative productions. I think that the most one of the most important parts in paid ads, in paid social specifically, is the creatives. And so that's something I put a lot of effort into. And also a fun fact about me, I've not always been in tech marketing. It's in the past I've been an academic. I have a PhD in philosophy from Tel Aviv University. And after completing my PhD, I decided that I need an adult job. So I made the switch to tech marketing.
I wonder if I'm sure your way of philosophical thinking has an effect on the way that you run ads. That would definitely be a topic for a different show. Um, so let's start with who should run ads. I work with different startup founders, and there are so many channels you can choose from. Right? You can go more organic, you can go more paid. How would you approach that?
So I think it would be easier to start with who shouldn't run ads. And I often talk to prospects and I tell them, listen, don't run ads. You're not ready for that, or it doesn't even make sense for your business model. I'll give you an example. I talked to a prospect who approached me about my paid ad management services, and the product isn't GA yet, and they plan to start driving traffic in a month or two to the product, but at first they only want 100 users, 200 users, something like that, just to test the platform rather than truly scale. And I told the prospect, listen, don't do paid social. Okay, first of all, if you only want 100 signups to your product, you can probably get that organically. And if you don't want to go on the organic route, you can simply advertise one or two times in some newsletter or podcast, and you will get your 100 or 200 signups. So I'd say that first of all, if your product isn't generally available yet, don't bother. It's a waste of money to advertise a product that you can't really sell at the moment. And second, if you don't want scale, if you don't want to generate not only recurring revenue, but scalable revenue, if you're not looking to do something that can scale to the thousands of users, then there are better routes for other than paid ads. Other than that, I also say that if are not confident, if you're not confident that you found product market fit, don't bother with paid ads. It's again a waste of money. Outbound is a much better way to understand if you found product market fit. Okay, I always feel more confident when I start working with a new brand and they have some sort of outbound motion already figured out. Not 100% figured out because it takes time, and inbound can also greatly support outbound. But if you managed to email someone that you don't know and get them to buy your product, That's a good indication that you found product market fit and that paid social ads can help you scale it. Because the thing with ads in general is that they do not add to sales as much as they multiply sales, which means if you have no traction, paid ads won't have anything to multiply. But if you found some traction, you can multiply it, you can enhance it with paid ads.
It's actually funny. I'm thinking of the word add, ADD. So ads add to what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So they don't add, they multiply. They take something that already works and they increase its distribution. But you have to, but before you start doing paid ads, you need to make sure that you found something that people want to buy.
It's actually interesting that you have this approach, and I've talked to multiple ad consultants that have the same approach. But on the other hand, I'm just going to ask for a brief answer here, then we'll move on. There are all these indie hackers or founders that they don't do outbound, they didn't do anything, and they run a few ad tests to see, just the landing page, and they see like people are signing up, people want to buy, and then they build the next stage of their product. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that it's a problematic approach because signups are cheap. The easiest thing in the world is to get people to sign up to your product. Even if you don't want to monetize just yet, and in 2025, I do recommend that your paid ads, to run paid ads only if you already monetize your product. But even if you want to measure events that are pre-monetization, those should still not be signups. Okay, because signups can be anyone. Okay, signups can be my grandmother, and it can be an engineer in a Fortune 500 company. So even if we want to measure events that are not monetization, as is common in B2D, I would still highly recommend to not measure startups, but to measure activations. For example, how many people not only signed up to the product, but connected it to their database, added it to the VS Code, etc.
I understand. That makes sense. All right. So let's assume we found some spark. We decide to run ads. How do we choose which platform?
So the best question to ask yourself is, where can I find my target audience? Where are they spending time? Are they spending time on LinkedIn? Are they spending time on Twitter? Are they spending time on Instagram? Uh, and that's generally speaking. But if we zoom in a bit, there are I divide the possible channels to two types: there are B2C channels and there's LinkedIn ads, because LinkedIn ads is the really only truly B2B paid social channel. And in many cases, you simply don't have an option to advertise anywhere but on LinkedIn ads, because your TAM, your total available market, is simply too small. If you only sell to Fortune 500 companies, okay, and if you only want to talk to VPs or directors, and your entire TAM is something like 20,000 people, then most likely you'll have a very hard time reaching those people anywhere except LinkedIn. But that's not always the case. There are many companies that have a larger TAMs. Okay? For example, I work with a company that sells to IT professionals. Now, it's still B2B, but because there are so many IT professionals, IT managers, IT directors, etc., we can make other channels work as well. We do great job on LinkedIn, but also Instagram is an incredible channel for us that actually generates much lower CPL. But again, but that's only an option if your time is big enough. So if you're a B2D startup and you sell to software engineers, then you should definitely consider channels outside of LinkedIn because they are much cheaper and it's often easier to reach your target audience there. But if you want very specific types of personas, if they need to have very specific titles, or if they need to have very specific interests that not a lot of people have, then in that case, LinkedIn is your best bet.
Okay, so assuming that I don't need something more specific than, let's say, a software engineer, um, I think a lot of people have that perception. Hey, software, oh, professionals are on LinkedIn, but I think at the end of the day, a lot of people go out and they also have fun on social, right? They may be watching TikTok, they may be looking at things on Instagram. And I know there's also another approach that says you got to understand the context of the social platform, right? Like if I'm looking at girls in bikinis, maybe it's the wrong time to advertise software solutions that help devs.
So I disagree. I think that even if you look at girls in bikinis, you can still advertise. There's still value in showing ads for a software product because I think it's part of a more general approach, a wrong approach, as I see it, to advertising. A lot of people think of advertising in terms of direct response. Okay? For example, many people, if they have the option, they prefer to advertise on desktop, especially PLG products. Why? Because the assumption is that, okay, if my product is desktop first, then I want the user to be on their desktop when they see the ad. So they just switch tabs and go to my website and start using it. But most of the times, ads don't work like that. Most of the time, you are exposed to an ad one time, twice, three times, four times, and you start thinking about it. You remember it. You know what kind of problem it solves. And then when you encounter this problem, you say, okay, I better go to the website and maybe see if it can really do what it promises. So you need to create this awareness. And I don't like to use the term brand awareness because it's not about awareness to the existence of the brand, but to the existence of the product, to the existence of specific capabilities of the product to solve certain specific problems. And this kind of awareness can be generated on Instagram, on TikTok, or on LinkedIn.
I see. So I think, especially at the first stages, it's just being aware of the product and it doesn't even matter what the context was before, in your opinion. Cool. So let's assume that we chose a platform. How do I go about creating effective ads? I'm assuming the first thing I would want to do is set goals.
Yes. So that's another mistake that I see often. I think that often marketeers are not aggressive enough in the goals they set to themselves. As I said, paid ads should deliver one thing: meetings with your ICP. Okay, you should start getting meetings to your salespeople from your ICP for people who are interested to learn more about your product. And that's why I don't really like the idea of brand awareness, because even if you do need to raise awareness, awareness is a tool. It's not an end goal. The end goal should be performance, especially when we're talking about startups, like seed stage, round A, round B. There might be, if you're a giant multi-million brand, things might be different. But if you're an early stage startup, you need to focus on getting meetings to your sales reps, because that's what will move you forward. So I will always say that, okay, sometimes on a week over week basis, we need to measure leads, how many leads we generated. But to truly understand the performance of paid ads, to truly understand if what we're doing works, what we need to ask ourselves is, how many meetings did we generate to our sales reps? And when enough data accumulates, also what was the outcomes of those meetings? Were those meetings qualified? Did they generate pipeline, etc.? So that's why when clients ask me, what kind of CPL should I expect? What kind of cost per lead should I expect? I will always tell them that I don't really know and I don't really care, because that shouldn't be the goal of our engagement. Our goal should be to generate meetings for your sales team, or if that's like a B2D, PLG kind of brand, then to generate revenue. Uh, and what and the main metric we should keep track of is what is our cost per meeting.
Okay, makes sense. So after I set goals, what is the next step?
The next step is to produce creatives. And that's another point where a lot of brands make mistakes, because a mistake I commonly encounter in creative productions is creatives that simply do not tell the story of the product. And again, you should differentiate between the story of the brand and the story of the product. Ultimately, if someone watches your ads, view your ad, and doesn't understand, to a certain extent at least, what kind of capabilities your product offers, then you did nothing with your ad. You gained nothing, because the whole point is to educate your prospects about the kind of problems that you can solve. So when they encounter this problem, they will go to you. And so the most important thing is to explain what your product does, and if possible, to also show it. I'm personally a very big fan of video ads. Okay, that's a large part of the service that I provide to my clients. I produce UGC style ads or TikTok style ads, but really, even if you don't have those kind of resources, one go-to creative concept that I always like to test is very simple: a screenshot of your product with some kind of title that explain what it does. And it's simple, but and many brands hesitate about doing it because their product is ugly, because they're B2B. But I always tell them it doesn't matter. Even if your product is ugly, still show it, because prospective customers want to see your product, want to see what's out there. That's the way they educate themselves about possible solutions to their problems. And so that's one way to very easily create a high converting creative: screenshot of the product and a title that explains what it does.
Would you mind sharing some? Like maybe we can go over some good and bad ones from your screen?
So this ad works very well for us. And one of the reasons is that, first of all, it seems unusual to find such an ad on LinkedIn. Why? Because I'm taking a very popular concept from TikTok, interviewing people on the streets, and I use this aesthetics, this concept, to deliver B2B related content. So it immediately catches the eye. It makes people wonder, like, what am I seeing here? And so I'm seeing a very, very, very high rate, view rates, like above 30% for sure, often over 40%. And because I talk, and as you can see, it also talks specifically about the problem, in this case, cybersecurity vendors are too expensive, and about the specific solutions that FIDOM offers, like CVE detection, SSL certificates, etc. So it's both catches the eye and explains quite deeply what is the actual product. But I can also show an example for a good image.
Yeah, that would be great.
Just give me a second.
By the way, I noticed that a large chunk of the ad was talking to a person compared to displaying the product. Is there any, like, do you have any thoughts on the ratio?
Yeah. So in video ads, you should show the product, but unless your product is truly visually engaging, like Monday.com, for example, if you check out Monday.com's ads, you'll see that they show the product a lot. But that's because the UI is such an important part in the offering. Okay,
Hmm.
the product is beautiful, and that's a major product advantage for them. Now in B2B, you often, like I said, you want to show the product, but often you do need some context setting. And that's why I find the video so effective for paid social, because it gives you the opportunity to set the proper context for the problem that you solve. Because it's not immediately, unlike B2C or B2C to B, you can't, in B2B you can't always capture the capabilities of your product in a single sentence without first explaining,
Hmm.
giving some background to it. And that's why the format of a conversation works very well for me, because it gives me the opportunity to tell a more complex story.
I see. That makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about the user journey, right? Like, let's say you set up the perfect creative. Um, what needs to happen next? Where do you direct them to? I know there are some experts that recommend landing pages, others say no, homepage or docs is fine. Um, what about call to actions on the homepage? Let's say you have both start free and book a demo. How do you assess what's happening after the layer of the ad?
Okay, so first of all, it really depends if you're talking about sales-led motion or product-led motion. Okay, if it's a product-led motion, then the most important thing is again showing the product in the landing page, because you want, like I said, you don't want people to just sign up. You want people to sign up and then activate. So they need to understand what are they getting into. They need to understand what's going to happen after they click the sign up button and fill in the details. In sales led motions, the situation is a bit different, because ultimately what you want them to do is to be interested enough to not only fill the form, but also pick up the phone when your sales rep calls them. And in those cases, I usually find that it's better to let your ads do most of the heavy lifting. And by that, what I mean is that I don't find it useful to invest a lot of energy in landing pages as much as creating ads that deliver the proper message to begin with, create enough interest. Uh, so when someone and tell the story in a manner that when someone clicks on the ad or goes to your website, they already do it with the intent either to learn more about your product, in which case docs or homepage are a great solution, or they want to schedule a call, and in that case, you can send them to the requested demo page. One thing I'll add about that, though, is that one is another option we didn't cover is LinkedIn's native lead forms. Now, those are very popular, especially in gated content. And I also use them a lot in direct response ads, in direct response campaigns, where the call to action is to request a demo. But I only do so for companies that have a very well established SDR organization. So if we're talking about an early stage startup, seed stage or round A, where they have like one account executive, or maybe the founder even does the sales, in those cases, I'll never use LinkedIn's native lead forms, but send directly to the homepage because lead forms, LinkedIn's lead forms, are bound to deliver higher quantity of leads, but the price you pay is that they have less intent. And this math can work out very well when you have a very well trained SDR team. But in all other cases, I always prefer to send to the home page.
Got it. So I'll try to repeat some of the things I understand. If it's product led, then the way I understand it is it's important that the funnel continues and they get to a website where they understand what's going on with the product. Then they can sign up and continue to play with the product. And later down that funnel, they may convert. If it's sales led, then the ads need to do the heavy lifting. And the website's main goal is just to have you click book a demo from then on.
Well, in either case, I would say that it's best practice to have the ad do the heavy lifting. And by heavy lifting, I mean explain what is the product, what are its capabilities, what kind of problem it solves. But and in both cases, you always want to have your website explain in further details what the product does, have case studies, etc. So when a prospect wants to learn more, they'll have the option to. But when it's product led, I find that it's very important to also show the product in the landing page because that's the next step. The next step is actually going to your UI and start playing around with the product. And that's asking for quite a lot from your prospect, and they should be ready for that. And one way of getting them ready for that is showing them the product both in the ad but also in the landing page.
So if it's sales led, then all you have to do is pique their interest. I'm guessing also showing the product is important, but like I know there are also websites that have two call to actions, right? So you have the start free and book a demo, but it may also cause a little bit of confusion also in assessing the situation, right? Like if you are trying to book a demo, but then they go through a product led motion, then it could be hard to assess what's happening.
Yeah, that's why ultimately you need a common metric that's true for both funnels. That can be revenue or can be meeting booked, because even in today, most PLG is actually PLS. Like, okay, you try the product, but ultimately you will talk to a salesperson in order to complete the purchase. So if you have two call to actions, you need to find a metric that captures the value of both funnels. That's common to
Mhm.
both.
Okay, got it. Um, what else? So, okay, so we talked about setting up goals, setting up ads, running the creative, what the user journey looks like. Are there any maybe tips per platform or things to stay away from or common mistakes that you see?
Well, those are already very platform specific. And if I'll take LinkedIn for example, so on LinkedIn, common mistakes include having the LinkedIn audience network on, which is a horrible network. It's full of bots. It's completely useless. Another mistake is to have the audience expansion on, which again will bring you traffic that's not your ICP. But really, those are technical mistakes, and I think that if you're a VP marketing and you work with a demand gen professional with enough experience, they are not very likely to make those mistakes anymore. I think that the main mistakes that I'm seeing are not really about the technicalities, okay? Because the technicalities are really a set of best practices that are very well known in the industry. The main problems I'm seeing are related to general strategy, both in terms of the metrics that are being tracked and in terms of the messages that are being delivered and the overall creatives that are being produced. In paid social, if you crack your creative, you've done 70% of the work.
Got it. And what about assessing competition? What about reviewing competitor ads, understanding what's happening in the market, and also maybe Google ads? There's the strategy of like being sponsored above your competition.
So Google Ads is a completely different issue. Okay, it's much simpler and less interesting, and also I think it works. It doesn't work as well as it used to. I think that Google search is a channel in decline. But in terms of honestly, in paid social, I don't do a lot of competitive research anymore, simply because I work exclusively with B2B brands. And in most cases, their competitors are doing horrible job, very boring ads that I have nothing to learn from. And so I prefer to be inspired by B2C2B brands such as like Elementor or Monday.com or Grammarly that are doing much more interesting things. I will do some competitor research for Google Ads to find out any keywords that I should target that may have missed. But usually, when you go to and check what a competitor in the B2B space is doing, you'll find the same old ebooks and white papers, and that doesn't work anymore.
Got it. We are coming to an end, so let's do a lightning round. Just quick answers. So you said that you focus, just going a little bit back, you said that you focus more on, I think, more about the creative that you see compared to the competition. Um, are there any, just throw a few more tips out there for someone getting started in ads?
Don't ask yourselves what the big brands are doing. What That's a common mistake I say. People who are asking, they work in a space that there are like these huge brands, and they ask themselves, okay, let's see what Salesforce does in their paid social campaign. Let's see what ServiceNow does in their paid social campaign, and that's a terrible strategy because most likely uh, whatever they're doing won't. I don't know if it works for them, but it definitely won't work for your early stage startup. So you always have to be ready to invent it rather than to copy from those huge companies.
Cool. Let's say I started running ads. How do I assess the situation? When do I decide to stop, continue? How do I analyze my performance?
So that's a good question. Often, when prospects talk to me, they ask how much money in ad spend they should allocate to the paid ads campaigns. And I always recommend to spend at least $10,000 a month, if not $15,000 a month. The reason that I made this recommendation is to enable faster iterations. Let's say that I launched a campaign, and let's say that in the first week it spent $5,000, and it didn't generate any meeting. That's enough data for me to come to the conclusion that something isn't working, because I expect to pay in B2B a few $1,000s per booked meeting. And if I already crossed the threshold of $5,000 and didn't book any meeting, then something is problematic is going on, and that's enough data to make me reevaluate my campaign structure, my messaging, something that I need to change. But if, on the other end, we launched a campaign, and in the first week it only spent $1,000, I can't make any decision based, and no meetings were generated. I can't make any decision based of that, because I can't necessarily expect $1,000 of ad spend to generate a meeting. So, really, the question I like to ask myself before I make a decision, in order to assess if I have enough data to make the decision, is I ask myself, what would happen if a lead would convert right now? Would it lead me to make a different decision? And if the answer is yes, then you should give that campaign more time. But even but if the answer is no, that is, if the campaign, you would still mark it as poorly performing, even if one more lead came, then that's probably time to make a change.
So it sounds to me like you start with, here's how many meetings I would expect to book. Like let's just say $1,000 per meeting, and I spend 5,000. I would like, in a good performing campaign, to end up with 5 meetings. If that doesn't happen, like let's say I get half of that or a third of that or almost nothing, it's time to make a big change, not just like a call to action button.
Yeah, generally speaking, I've never seen a change in the call to action that radically transforms the campaign performance. No, if you come to the conclusion that something is really not working with the campaign, you should review your audience. Maybe you should be targeting a different audience. You should review your creatives. Maybe they're not engaging enough. Maybe they're engaging, but they're not telling the product story, or maybe they're not telling the right product story, because most B2B startups have multiple products, or at least multiple ways of presenting the same product. So these are really the angles that you should be looking at. Like, am I targeting the right people, and am I telling them the right story?
Got it. Thanks so much, Itamar. For me, it was really insightful. Where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, so just search for Itamar Ben Yair, or you can find my website, itamarbY.io.
Cool, man. Great having you on the show.
Great being here. Thank you.